Okay, great. Okay, so our subject is nurturing. And as I was saying that this nurturing is very much about being supportive and available. And what I found whilst I was thinking about this, what I found really important, almost as a pre, a pre-thought before going into the subject, is to already think about the balance of nurturing, because a lot of us, a lot of people are maybe have the tendency to naturally be supportive and available. And it's really easy for that to go off balance, where we end up, or people end up in a position where they find themselves holding the baby, whereas maybe the agreement was that, well, I'll support and be available, but it's quite different from saying, okay, well, you are now responsible. And so I thought that the balance for nurturing, whatever it might be, whether we're nurturing an idea or a relationship or some task or our bodies, whatever it might be that we're nurturing, or a plant, whatever we're taking care of, in a sense, that the balance of this quality is something like firmness, or to sustain the boundaries, honesty. And so I find that these kind of qualities are a really good balance for the whole beautiful virtue of nurturing, sorry. And it just keeps things clear and keeps things in balance, because with the kind of personality type, shall we say, or that kind of quality, when it's developed, it's very easy to be taken advantage of, or to allow ourselves to be taken advantage of, and usually there's a bit of both. So that's why, together with nurturing, we need boundaries, and we need firmness. And so I think it's really important to know the difference between exactly this, being supportive and available, and being responsible and accountable. So which one is it? What have I agreed to? And so I think it's really important to be aware of this, because otherwise what happens is that it's very easy to lose that spirit of nourishing, of nurturing, getting confused between these two words. But actually the nurturing, we need to have really that sense of being available. And we can only be available, like even emotionally available, mentally present, when we're really on board with it, and when we're interested and we're clear as to what we're doing, and probably even why we're doing that. So I think it's really important to keep that spirit of nurturing alive. And actually, it's impossible to truly nurture when we feel obligated, or we're coerced into doing something, or when we're feeling forced to do something. Then we might, be available, or we might support, but it's very much maybe with just that difference in our energy. And so what does it take to remain close to that spirit of nurturing when it's needed? So there are other times when we need to be firm, but that's another kind of nourishing, nurturing. And so sometimes we think that, oh well, if I'm saying no, then I'm not being kind. But actually we know that to say no can sometimes be the best thing. To let something go can actually be the best thing to help it grow. There's the classic example of the cocoon, where the caterpillar got into created the cocoon around it, and the butterfly started to come out, at the right time, and of course, as it was coming out, the wings were getting stuck, and the 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 observer could see that they were having a lot of difficulty, and so they tried to help the butterfly. But actually, by doing that, they ended up reducing the strength in the wings of the butterfly. And so sometimes we need to say no, and that is what will really enable the growth and enable the nurturing of whatever it is. And this can also be in terms of an idea, in terms of ourselves, and an idea that we might have a brilliant idea, but actually it's not quite the right time for that. And so by holding on and by pushing and by forcing and to get support, to get attention, to get clearance, whatever that might be, we end up putting in a different kind of energy, the energy of forcefulness into that. So there might be a lot of determination, no doubt, but somehow that spirit of gentleness, because nurturing carries that kind of gentleness and sensitivity within it. So, so I was wondering for you, what might be the image of nurturing that comes to your mind, in terms of whether it's a person or whether it's an idea or whether it's exactly this, a friendship or a daily routine, for example, a job. All of these things need nurturing in order for them to grow, in order for us to grow, in order for our whole experience to be whole and complete, wholesome and complete. Because of course, everything needs input. When we just allow something to, in a sense, go dry, then we lose interest in it because we're not putting in that energy. And so I think nurturing is about putting in an energy. So just sorry, there was a bit of noise that's from the outside, but anyway. Okay, here we go. So, so the question is this, really, that when, what do I need to do in order to stay tuned into the vibe and the spirit of nurturing when I'm choosing to do that? And I think it's an important aspect to consider, that yes, it's an emotional and caring investment. In fact, and this is exactly what I wanted to touch on, Anna, actually, is that when we're doing something, it's really important to do that without wanting to get a return from that same person or the outcome of a certain project or whatever it is. Because if I do something thinking that, okay, well, today I'm helping you and tomorrow you're going to help me, aren't you? We're basically just asking for trouble, in the sense of we're asking for disappointments, or a lot of tension, because if we don't get the support that we expect, then most likely we feel abandoned or rejected or in some way put aside, not considered. And so that can be very painful, you know. And so, yes, to the reminder to not open emotional bank accounts with anyone, and give because we want to. And also, actually, when I realized this whole mechanism of even subtly doing something to get back something in return at whatever level that might be, is basically putting the other person in debt to us. And by putting the other person in debt to us, basically we're putting them in a weaker position. And why we might do that is to feel better about ourselves, to feel like people owe us something. And so therefore we're okay, therefore we feel okay about ourselves. And so they're very, in a sense, tricky, and sometimes not very straight reasons why we might do something. But actually, instead of that, knowing a little bit like I think Anna was meaning, is to know that in fact it is an investment. So it's not that we won't get the return. We absolutely, that is sure that we get the return. But the return is already merged, is included in the giving, in the doing. Because how do you feel when you do something with love? The first person who feels filled with love is you. And so this I find is the really interesting part of it, where to be able to do something with love will inevitably bring the return of love, even though not necessarily from an expected source. So we might think, well, I've given so much to this relationship or this person or this idea, this project. And so, of course, I'm going to get the return from that, but maybe not, and possibly not. And so, exactly, it's this, as I think it's Aldous, yes, saying that we create a bondage both ways and we make others feel weaker. And so it's really a source of great suffering, actually. This thing of expectations is one of the biggest pain creators, suffering creators, really, for us. Because often we just don't get what we think we're going to get. And not because the world is against us, but just because maybe someone's not able to, or someone doesn't know what we want, doesn't understand how we want it back, or they just don't have the energy, the resources to be able to give a return. And in fact, this is the thing, is that when we're clear with people that, look, I'm doing this so that you will love me back, then the other person has the chance to say, well, okay, I don't really want it because I don't think I can love you back, And so it gives the other person an opportunity to agree or disagree. But very often we don't give that opportunity to people. We just make the agreement unilaterally for both or for all parties. And then, of course, the other side or the other energy would not be part of that. And so it creates a whole lot of complications for us. So the best thing I find is really to just know that the return is inevitable from somewhere or another, at some point or another. And best if it comes actually at the time of need. So maybe at the time that I wanted, and because I think that I would look good, or because it's the time of the result and the success, and so I should get the return. Maybe I don't actually need it then. I don't need the um, I don't need the nurturing from others at that moment. But maybe there are other moments where people out of the blue offer me support. And so, yes, that's out of the goodness of their heart, but it is also like a return for something that I have offered. Now, maybe I've never met these people before in my life, but it's my energy that's coming round. And in turn, for them, the support and the nurturing that they are giving will go back to them as well at another time. So, in fact, we don't need to go about feeling indebted and obligated and over responsible for each other. But we can do that when we do things from our heart and really knowing that that there is receiving embedded in the giving. And this is actually very freeing, as Aldous was saying. Otherwise, we end up creating bondages. So bond means I'm tied up. And yes, often we're not aware of it ourselves. And that's the reason why I think the more we can see the difference between being available and supportive and offering that, and so the difference between that and feeling responsible and accountable for others or for a certain expected outcome. So we're often we are trained and conditioned into taking responsibility for everything and everyone and everything that happens to everyone who we come into contact with. And so it's actually really about, I find it's about waking up to that. And the more I personally become aware of that actually if someone chose to walk rather than get a taxi, and then I was walking, they chose to walk with me. And they knew that after walking a certain amount of time, they have a lot of pain, then they still chose to walk. So if they are now in pain, that is not my responsibility. But it's very easy to take responsibility for these kind of things. I don't know if you see what I mean, but whether it's the physical pain or whether it's the feelings, that it's very, very easy to take on board. And thereby, when I take on board the responsibility, so I feel bad that they are in pain, and I think, well, why didn't they do this and why didn't they do that? Then my whole spirit of nurturing has just completely died. And so I will definitely not be available for their needs in that moment. But I will be stuck in the reason why they ended up in pain and what I could have done at that time or should have done or what they should have done. And so, so one is giving from freedom and the other is taking responsibility for other people's feelings and actions. Absolutely. And there should not be any guilty feeling. Absolutely. And this is the thing, is that it's often because of this sense of over responsibility that we just continue to fall into the trap of feeling guilty. And then because we don't like feeling guilty, then we end up blaming that person for our feelings. And so actually, we've taken responsibility for their condition and we haven't taken responsibility for our feelings. So it's all very contorted, actually. Usually, the over responsibility means that I take responsibility for things that are not my responsibility, and I don't take responsibility for things that are my responsibility, like my feelings. So I say, well, I'm feeling bad because you didn't do what you should have done. You know? And so actually that's nothing to do with me. At that time, maybe I gave the support and the availability. Look, I'm going to walk. What would you like to do? And so whatever they chose, that is their choice. And of course, here we're talking about adults. You know, with children, it's a different matter. Minors, it's a different matter. But when we're talking about adults, then it's very much about being aware of this difference. So yes, absolutely, giving from freedom, giving with that sense of um, giving from that sense of willingness. And that's what availability is, isn't it? It's that I'm here, I'm present, you know, and I'm willing and I'm able, therefore. And so it's really to learn how to see the difference between these two things. And exactly, yes, it's that's why, in fact, the whole aspect of boundaries came up for me as I was thinking about this subject, which usually thinking about nurturing, you know, think about unconditional, just overflowing, loving kindness, availability, support, um, almost like a, you know, going into the bordering off into this whole thing of being self-sacrificing, you know, which is basically the opposite of nurturing the self. And so again, there's a big difference between kindness and being self-sacrificing. So that's a whole other subject. But I think often within the virtue of nurturing, it is easy to fall into that trap of being self-sacrificing. And what that means is exactly what came up at the beginning, putting another person in debt to us. Because we've given up this and we've given up that so that they can, you know, study, and so that they can be comfortable. And so therefore they are obligated to me. And so usually the energy of self-sacrificing has a lot of hidden hooks within it. And so it's absolutely best to avoid all of those kind of dynamics. And so the example, they also got something from the walking together, right? Yes, absolutely. That's interesting point. All those is that maybe the need of the other person was company. And so they were willing to, in a sense, go into to bear the pain in order to get the company. However, if they then happened to mention, for whatever reason, that they were in pain, and I take that on board as my responsibility, then it really is my problem. And so, in fact, it's their choice. So they got the company and they were willing to tolerate the pain. They knew about it. So they were obviously willing to tolerate it. And so, can I leave it at that? And that's what keeping it clean is, isn't it? Rather than overthinking, oh, should I, shouldn't I? What did they mean? And did they, you know, didn't take care properly, and I wasn't kind enough. And so all of these thoughts are just really superfluous and actually quite draining. of our ability to nurture and to be available. Self-sacrificing, expect retributions, absolutely. Yes, no, it cannot be free. So yes, so it's quite interesting, really, the whole to look at the subject in a 360 degrees way, isn't it? Where on one side there is this, and I want to read actually the little text that I sent, because I think it really does give the description of the whole spirit of nurturing. So to be constantly supportive and available, I open up pathways by guiding with love and inventiveness. I nourish and encourage, like a parent teaching a child to walk, like an artist cradling an idea until it thrives, like a nurse fostering a patient to health, listening, seeing, contributing in often unseen ways. I provide the warmth of tenderness and experience. And so this is the thing, is that to be able to do all that with the spirit that matches the words, can you imagine where our consciousness needs to be in that? And of course, there cannot be anything about wanting something back, or about from that person, for example, or about, in a sense, this whole thing of putting the other, of neediness. There's no aspect of neediness in this, and therefore, in order to nurture, of course, we need to nurture ourselves. And so this is the thing, is that I yes, in fact, the metaphors in the text they give an idea really of the extent of support and availability. And this is what I think we need to, in a sense, choose and be aware of, as to what is the agreement, maybe a tacit agreement, but what is my agreement? And whether it's in the relationship, whether it's in an idea, whatever it is. And so I think that it's really useful for us to check at any moment, especially to do with the self, shall we say, what is it that needs nurturing? So even with other people, so it might be that that someone who's around us is disturbed or upset, or in some way uncomfortable or angry, or for whatever reason is in some sort of suffering. And so it's a great question to say, well, what in them needs nurturing? And so I may notice that what they're feeling is a lack of support. And so because they don't have the full information, or because they feel a bit lost, and so maybe they're hitting out in some way. But actually, rather than getting stuck in the fact that they are, maybe saying unpleasant things and things that are not true, can I kind of jump those hurdles and look and see what needs nourishing and why? And of course, within that is the question, am I willing to offer that? And I think all of this happens very quickly, is that when we see what's really needed, then probably the willingness comes up. But we need to be very honest with ourselves, because it might be that at that time, I'm the one that needs, and I don't have the energy to support. And if we try to support, we end up taking from the other person rather than offering. You know? And so it doesn't mean that we always have to feel full and feel good, because often the feelings don't match our current condition. They don't necessarily match. But we need to be aware that, am I willing to draw on my resources to be available for this person? So the example of a mother, I guess, I'm not a mother in a physical way, but it is interesting to think about and see the experiences where often the mother will be tired and really just want to have some time off and time out. But of course, the child needs attention. And so there will be occasions where the mother just says, I just really don't want to do this. No. And but somehow something else, seeing the child and maybe seeing the real need beyond the screaming and the tantrums, and seeing how the bond, actually the sweet bond that there is between this being, this little being. And so the mother is able to emerge and draw on her resources that maybe were not immediately visible to her in that moment. And so I think it's a little bit like that, is that we all have these resources within us that we can choose to draw on, even though in the moment we may say, no, I just can't, and so maybe it's true that we say, well, you know what, not now, I can't. And so yes, the inventiveness is really important as well. So that's the first question, is what is it that needs nourishing? To be able to see beyond all the screaming and which for an adult could be, maybe not screaming out loud, but it's screaming, emotional screaming, and tantrums. And so it's again, it's this thing of saying, okay, what needs nurturing? Is it my heart? Is it an idea, a child, a relationship, or a person who's around me, a plant or an animal? What is it that needs nourishing? And what is it within that being that needs nourishing? So for an idea, for example, do I need to nurture this idea by going into silence and visualizing what it looks like? Can I nurture the idea by sharing it with a couple of people that I trust? And in what way? By writing about it, by writing my intention, or my heart. If my heart needs nurturing, then what can I do? Can I go into nature, connect with the earth, connect with the 5 elements, so that my heart has some space to come back to its wholeness? What do I need to do? What is it that needs nurturing? And so then, of course, there's the question, well, where do I get that from? Where do I get the resources in order to be able to nurture? And of course, one of the sources is exactly the self. The original nature of the self is peace, is love, this beautiful, eternal purity and bliss and power. And so just knowing that, just remembering that, is like accessing a whole treasure store from within. So it might be, the source might be silence, for example. Silence is an amazing, the ability to go into silence is one of the most nurturing experiences and conditions, because it's like going inside and connecting, recharging. Or it might be exactly this, going into nature, where we connect our bodies and we discharge the negative energy that we might have accumulated. So nature helps in that way. Now, we don't want to always use nature for that, because we want to also offer to nature the energy of peace and love, and so there needs to be this exchange. But there are occasions where nature will help us, and in fact nature will always help us, probably, but we also need to offer to nature the support of our energy of peace, because the energy of the soul is powerful and it does have an impact on nature. So we can offer that. Of course, another source is definitely the Supreme. And in fact, maybe the most important source, because this being, the closer we create our relationship with this being, the more access we have to an unlimited supply, an uninterrupted power supply. They have these, especially in countries where there's not much, where the electricity keeps going and there's not much internet or whatever. They have these machines called uninterrupted power supplies. And that makes sure that there's no fluctuation in the frequency of the current, because that damages the electrical appliance. And so for us, the Supreme is like our uninterrupted power supply, where we can just, all we need to do is connect and draw that love and draw that sense of being nurtured, that sense of belonging, the sense of being important and of being significant. That if I am significant to the Supreme, that means something. And of course, the Supreme or God is significant to me, then that means that's saying something about me. And so that helps very much with our self-respect. So we need to nurture our self-respect. That's a big thing to nurture. We don't want to nurture our ego, that very often we protect and really take care of not showing up bad or not looking bad. But that's just protecting and nurturing our ego. But what we really want to nurture is our self-respect. And so it's like the what. So first one is the what needs nurturing. And then the second one is where to get this from. And then the third one, which I think we spoke about first actually, is when. So when to stop or when to change, when to step back, when to let the energy settle, and to allow it to continue to grow and develop in its own way. And of course, again, it's that question of, can we nurture too much? And we've looked at the kind of behaviors that go with that, whether it's self-sacrificing or whatever, creating indebtedness to other people. And sometimes letting go is the greatest gift that we can offer. And so this is interesting to ask these three questions whenever we want to refresh ourselves with this whole aspect of nurturing. I think it's really useful to think about these things, because then when the situations come up, and usually we start thinking about things when they're not as we would like them to be. And so it's much easier to see and understand clearly and change, adjust things for next time. That's what growing means. And nurturing The aim of nurturing is to enable growth and development, healthy growth and development. So anyway, those are some thoughts, and thank you for sharing as well. You can continue to do so. And in the meanwhile, what I wanted to do was to read you a piece by Dadi Janki. And actually, this piece is on leading others. But I thought that actually it describes really well what nurturing others in that kind of position might look like. You know, what's going on for the self, and what can I offer to others? And then we'll have a meditation. So, good leadership is based on skills which are incognito, so which are invisible, like pure feelings, faith, and trust. These keep both your frame of mind and the task moving in the right direction. It is human to err, but your high hopes for someone can actually eliminate errors. Doubting people has exactly the opposite effect. Believing in someone, extending feelings of trust, never telling people what to do, but stepping aside and watching with faith. This is what enables a task to get done in the right way. Spiritual skills like these are cultivated by avoiding complacency, learning to be sensitive, and staying alert. Keep an eye on your own spiritual health. Don't look at others for whatever is lacking. Look within. See what remains to be done and do it. Never allow those with strong personalities to tell you what to do, especially when you feel something else to be right. This creates depression, and you can't afford to be disheartened. Take care of yourself with understanding and love, making sure that you never compromise your own spiritual growth. So I thought that that was really brilliant advice in terms of where nurturing starts. So let's have our meditation now, and I will share a screen and some music. Okay. You can please tell me if the music is too loud or if it's okay. Balanced with the voice. Okay. So I take a deep breath. And I let my eyes rest gently at one point, so that my eyes and all the muscles in my face are relaxed. And I can feel the breathing going in and out, easily and naturally. As I relax into this moment, I check my intention What is it that I would like to experience? What state of consciousness would I like to move towards? What is the need for my energy at this moment? And as I connect with my needs, with what needs attention within me, I may need some time for myself. I may need to connect to my heart. I may need simply to relax and to be easy. In this way, I connect with myself. I become aware of what needs to be nurtured. And like a little sapling that needs just the right amount of water and sunlight, I connect with sensitivity and I offer from my inner resources the energy of love. My inner resources are stocked from the energy of the Supreme, the unlimited power supply of love, power of peace, power of truth. And it is from here that I draw these resources to offer them to the world. And before I offer them outside, I taste the sweetness of the closeness with the Supreme, and also with my own being. as my energy fills up, I can offer that with enthusiasm and with love to anyone who needs it. Even if it's someone from whom I have taken sorrow. Because I know that it is this love that will bring the healing, that will untie the bondage. I enjoy the energy of this love to flow through my being. From this place inside, where I can truly connect, I gently begin to make my way to bring my attention once again to my physical surroundings. To see how my body feels, to see how I feel inside. Enriched and nurtured by this experience. Thank you. So thank you very much for your presence, and I wish you a very good afternoon, and enjoy the whole practice of nurturing the self and others with the spirit of generosity and firmness as a balance. So thank you.